Picture a place with a temperature swing of 80 degrees. In summer, the ground here is so hot it literally burns your paws. The air shakes with heat and the horizon floats. But a couple of months pass and everything is buried in deep snow under an icy wind. This is New Mexico, a huge and harsh land of climate extremes where survival is a daily routine. Nature here forgives no mistakes, testing the locals for strength every single day. Summer here hits without mercy. 110 in the shade is an ordinary thing. Only there is almost no shade on these giant open spaces. The sun sucks all the moisture out of the soil, leaving only dust and cracked earth. It seems like no one lives here at all. Everyone fled this giant oven long ago. The dry, heavy air burns the lungs on the inhale. The wind does not refresh. It only throws hot sand in your face, sweeping away the tracks of the rare, bold ones. You can survive these long months only one way: hide, freeze, save every drop of water, and wait for the cool of night. But New Mexico is deceptive. You think it is just an endless hot wasteland? Mistake. Autumn flies by so fast you can miss it. The sky drags over with clouds, and the scorching heat gives way to a piercing cold. The local winter is not a cozy little snow. These are the high desert blizzards that in a couple of minutes mix the sky with the ground. The temperature falls far below zero, but the worst thing for the animals is the ice crust. First comes a thaw, and then the frost hits sharply, and the ground covers in armor. To get even dry grass out from under it is almost impossible. For the weak, this is certain death by starvation. Geography is to blame for it all. The region is squeezed between the northern plains and the southern mountains. It came out a cauldron of weather extremes. Nothing stops the air masses. From the north, the Arctic cold bursts straight in, and from the south and west, the dry heat of the deserts. How does anyone even survive here? Why do the animals not leave for somewhere milder? Why break their habits every 6 months and completely change tactics? The answer is in evolution. The local fauna simply had no choice. For thousands of years, they were tempered in this climate meat grinder. The beasts and birds here are real extremists. There is no right to a mistake. You either know how to shed heat in summer and grow a thick undercoat by winter, or you lie down to sleep at the bottom of a deep burrow. In this world, there is no golden middle, the main rule of the wild in New Mexico. Here, the elements decide everything. Every day, the animals play roulette with the weather, where the stake is their life. The character of the elements hits hardest in the far south, in the sandy oceans of the Chihuahuan Desert and the dunes of white sands. From above, it seems the earth here froze in yellow-red waves. The wind constantly reshapes the landscape, driving tons of sand. The dunes here are as tall as an apartment building, and they are always moving. At sunset, the dunes really do flare up crimson, pure Mars. The gypsum sand of white sands is mixed and carved by the wind into strange ridges. At first glance, a dead, sterile zone, only the blazing sun and dust underfoot. To wander into these sands without preparation is certain death. The place does not tolerate strangers, and a random mirage can easily turn out to be the last thing you see. But the desert only pretends to be dead. There is life here. It just learned to hide and save brilliantly. The main currency in these sands, the one they kill and die for, is water. No streams or puddles. The moisture is hidden deep underground or locked inside the residents themselves. To reach the water, the plants had to become engineers and forget about beauty. Take, for example, the mesquite, one of the main symbols of the American desert. This gnarled, knotty tree seems dried out even in spring. It has almost no ordinary leaves. They evaporate too much moisture. Instead, on its hard branches sit tiny green scales and thorns. But underground, the mesquite throws out powerful roots dozens of yards deep. They literally squeeze the remains of the winter rains out of the sand, drop by drop. By day, when the sun is at its peak and the sand heats to 160 degrees, the desert empties. To be on the dunes is physically impossible. The smallest delay ends in heat stroke. All the bustle goes underground, into complex labyrinths of cool burrows and shelters under the roots of bushes. In the saving half-dark, insects, rodents, and reptiles wait for sunset. And as soon as the sun sets and it sharply cools, the desert comes alive. Night, the time of quick rushes, ambushes, and desperate searching for food. For many, the only source of moisture is the morning dew on the stones and thorns. The local beetles climb the crests of the dunes, tip up their abdomens, and wait until the condensation runs right into their mouths. To survive here, it is not enough to just be tough. The body must rebuild itself completely. The small rodents, scurrying in the thickets of saltbush and cactus, can go their whole lives without a single sip of water. The crumbs they manage to get from dry seeds and rare roots are enough for them. Their organs work like chemical laboratories, returning every drop of liquid to the body, and on their feet grow stiff bristles. These are snowshoes, so they do not sink in the loose sand. In this yellow sea, there is almost nowhere to hide from other eyes. Every burrow and scrap of shadow is a fortress. It is defended to the last. The animals move silently, like shadows, leaving on the sand only thin chains of tracks that the wind will lick away by morning. This is a world of total tension. The slightest sound, and the merciless predators used to ruling these dunes will take an interest in you. And among those the whole desert small fry so fears, there is one absolute master. He plays by his own rules. When the morning cool leaves and the sand breathes heat again, most animals in a panic look for shade. But for him, this is the time of waking and the start of a big hunt. Meet the Gila monster, a real desert dragon and one of only 2 venomous lizards in the world. It is not the largest lizard, but it is heavy, dense, and it carries a weapon nothing else here has. It moves across the dunes with a frightening heavy grace. Its rough skin, beaded in black and vivid orange, works both as a warning and, against the sand and stone, as camouflage. With its powerful curved claws, it opens the hard ground as easily as a can opener. It holds its massive body up on its legs and keeps its belly off the sand. This is not a proud pose. The predator simply keeps its stomach away from the ground, which by noon heats up enough to kill even a reptile. All around is only the ripple of the dunes. How do you find prey here? The main tool of the Gila monster is not sight, not hearing, but its long, forked tongue. It constantly flicks in the air, and the lizard literally tastes the hot wind. The tongue catches the smells and sends them to a special organ on the roof of the mouth. It is a kind of chemical radar, and it hits without a miss. For mice and kangaroo rats, it is the end if the predator takes the trail. It senses prey from far off, and once the target is chosen, all trace of the heavy lizard's seeming slowness vanishes. The master of the sands breaks into a run. Looking at its bulky body, it is hard to believe it can move so fast. The rodent managed to dive into a burrow. That will not save it, only delay the finale. With its powerful legs, the Gila monster digs out deep underground passages in a couple of minutes. The sand flies in fountains. The predator reaches the farthest corner and drags out its prey. It is insatiable. It eats everything it can handle. Insects, scorpions, small animals, bird eggs, and chicks. Anything will do. But the truly harsh character of the lizard is revealed in clashes with those able to kill it. The deserts of New Mexico are full of dangerous venomous snakes. Their bite is certain death for most beasts, but for this dragon it is just another delicacy. The picture is this. The Gila monster notices a rattlesnake in the shade of a mesquite. The snake instantly coils into a ring, loudly rattles, and gets ready to strike. Any other animal would already retreat, but not this armored tank. It circles the snake, moves in a jerky way, throws it off, deliberately provoking the strike. The lunge is swift, but the dragon is ready. Its body is covered in dense, horny chainmail. The beads perfectly deaden the blows of the snake's fangs and do not let them reach the flesh. And even if the snake, by a miracle, bites through the armor, the local venom has almost no effect on it. It has an astonishing immunity. One sharp movement, and the powerful jaws lock dead on the neck or head of the snake. The finale is brutal. The predator furiously shakes its head, beats the prey against the ground, literally breaks its spine, and tears the tissue. As soon as the snake goes limp, do not expect long ceremonies. It swallows the prey, often still twitching in its death throes. The Gila monster holds this desert thanks to raw strength, hard armor, and the cold instincts of a killer. It knows no fear and rarely meets a worthy answer on the open sand. But in these parts, not everyone bets on aggression. While the heavy dragon relies on its jaws, other residents of the wastes survive completely differently. For them, life is fractions of a second and insane speed. While the Gila monster forces its way through by strength, the true nomads of the desert go their own way. In the hot haze on the horizon sometimes flicker light, almost weightless silhouettes. These are the pronghorn, the antelope of the American plains and deserts. Their fragility is deceptive, like the desert itself. From far off, they seem a mirage of hot air and dust. Thin reed legs, a graceful neck, and big moist eyes, always on guard. Their sandy coat blends with the burned earth. While the pronghorn stands still, it is invisible. How do these creatures, so delicate to look at, survive where armored lizards die? It is all in the ability to move. They turn the very emptiness into their main shelter. The main scourge of the desert is thirst, and the pronghorn handle it masterfully. A daily trip to water is not available to them, so the body takes water from any food. In the harshest months, these antelope eat bitter sagebrush, cactus, and saltbush, the stuff other plant eaters will not even look at. They graze at dawn, gathering drops of night dew from the tough stems. This scrap of moisture is enough to survive under the blazing sun. At noon, the antelope seem to dissolve. They dig little pits with their hooves in the shade of the rare mesquite, push aside the hot sand, and lie down on the cool earth. They freeze. They breathe slower, so as not to lose a gram of water. But thirst is not the only trouble. In the desert, there are no forests or cliffs. You are always in plain view. So the pronghorn live in a state of constant paranoia. They do not know deep sleep. Their ears scan the plain, catching the rustle of sand hundreds of yards away. Their huge eyes are set so wide they give almost a full circle of vision. If someone in the herd notices a strange movement, it stamps a hoof and gives a sharp snort. The herd instantly gathers. The air grows heavy. A second before the start, realizing they are spotted, the pronghorn play their main trump card. From a standstill, they burst into a gallop. 3 or 4 seconds, and the speed is already 50 miles an hour, and this is the fastest land animal on the whole continent. And it is not a run in a straight line. The antelope throw themselves from side to side, cut corners, confusing the predator and wearing it out. But there is one crippling flaw stitched into them. The pronghorn does not jump. It evolved on open ground with nothing to leap over, so when it meets a fence, it will not go over it. It runs the line looking for a gap. In the open, catching a healthy pronghorn is almost unreal. Whoever did not manage to get close before the burst will just swallow dust, watching the vanishing silhouette. But even such speed has a limit. In the desert survives the one who takes not by the rush, but by endurance and brains. At dusk, the shadows on the horizon come alive. These are not loners relying on blind luck. Into the game comes a coordinated pack from which no one in the open escapes. These shadows are the gray wolves. And here in the Southwest, their story is one of the great comeback fights in American wildlife. The Mexican gray wolf, the smallest and rarest of them, was hunted and poisoned until, by the end of the last century, there were none left in the wild at all. Everything alive today came from a handful of animals taken into captivity, and they are being released back into these very mountains and deserts, tracked one by one. The wolves of the desert hunt differently from their forest kin. On the flat plains, where everything is visible for miles, an ordinary ambush is doomed. The prey will see you before you get close for the rush. The desert wolf is drier and leaner, and its faded, dirty yellow coat blends with the sagebrush and sand. Its long legs are built not for a short sprint, but for a long marathon. Since surprise does not work, the bet is on iron discipline and calculation. On the bare plain, the pack acts as a single organism. Everyone has a role. From the side, their going out to hunt looks like the deployment of special forces. In the vanguard go the scouts, the youngest and lightest wolves. They comb the plain in a broad front, keeping their distance. Their task is not to kill, but to find and flush a pronghorn or a jackrabbit from its bed. As soon as the prey breaks from its spot, the pack reforms on the move, silently, without a single sound, orienting only by looks and instinct. The chase begins, terrible and mesmerizing. Over a short distance, the pronghorn easily leaves any pursuer. A couple of leaps and the predators swallow dust. But the wolves do not even think of chasing right away. Wasting strength is not in their rules. They start their deadly carousel. Part of the pack sits on the victim's tail. The wolves hold a convenient pace, while the antelope is forced to race at the limit of its ability. Meanwhile, the others cut corners, spread to the flanks, or run far ahead, guessing where the animal will dart. These predators have an innate sense of geometry. They calculate the trajectory of panic perfectly. As soon as the first pursuers tire, fresh ones come from the flanks to replace them. It is a real relay for survival, where a lone victim has not a single chance to catch its breath. The wolf can drive prey for dozens of miles, holding a speed of around 25 miles an hour. And it is not just physical exhaustion, it is a torture that breaks the will. The pronghorn races, the dry air burns its lungs, its heart pounds. In despair, it looks back and again sees the gray shadows. They do not even think of falling behind. In the end comes the moment when speed no longer saves. The muscles turn to stone from lactic acid. The light gallop gives way to a heavy, stumbling walk, and the antelope simply freezes, unable even to breathe. At that second, the wolves close the ring, and the leader makes the rush. No extra noise, no fuss, only the thud of a falling body and the hoarse breathing of the winners in the dry plain. In this burned wasteland, death always follows on your heels, and every day is a battle for water. It seems like there are no safe places here at all, and all life is doomed to wander the sands under the crosshairs of gray eyes. But go another dozen miles across the scorching plain, and suddenly the air smells of moisture. The wind no longer throws prickly dust in your face. On the trembling horizon, like a mirage, grows a dense, dark green wall. Here, the harsh rules no longer work. The burned plain sharply breaks off, opening a completely different, hidden world. It has its own laws, and its residents do not need to flee a wolf pack at all. A green wall in the middle of a dead landscape is the Rio Grande and its famous bosque, the cottonwood forest. After hundreds of miles of sand and dust, such a sight seems unreal. Right through the heart of the desert, winding like a huge brown snake, a swift river carries its muddy water. It cuts through the harsh landscape, building along its banks its own isolated world. This is the bosque, a unique floodplain forest that lives only off the river's moisture. You will not see a smooth transition from desert to thicket. The border here is sharp. You take one step out of the blazing hell and instantly fall into thick, damp cool. The bosque is not a light pine wood and not a spacious oak grove. Before us are real American jungles, wild, chaotic, where a person can barely push through. The trees here reach not up, but out, and the branches weave so densely they form a solid canopy. Cottonwoods, silvery willows, and the thorny Russian olive stand in a solid wall. And nature seems to have decided to lock this forest, wrapping the trunks in wild grapevines and clematis. The air is thick and heavy. It smells of damp earth, rotting leaves, and pungent flowers. The sun with difficulty punches through this green armor, throwing on the ground only rare golden threads. In the desert, the wind sweeps everything in its path, but here it bogs down in the crowns. Below remains only a stifling silence, ringing with mosquitoes. For New Mexico, the Rio Grande is like the main artery, pulsing in the middle of the burned plains. The muddy water draws life for miles around. The animals come here obeying instinct, and the density of residents becomes simply off the charts. Birds, predators, hoofed animals, and reptiles all live in the rhythm of the river's breathing. In spring, far off in the mountains, the snows melt and the Rio Grande breaks its banks. It harshly floods the bosque, breaking it into an archipelago of green islands. The water brings tons of silt. The oasis renews itself, and the greenery gets a powerful push to grow. It is a short season of abundance. The forest literally teems with life. Herons and cormorants build nests right in the crowns. Their racket sometimes drowns out the noise of the current. Into the saving shade gather all who are deadly tired of surviving among the scorching sands. But the bosque is not a resort for weary travelers. Where life boils, there is always plenty of death. The thickets save from the heat, but instantly turn into a perfect ground for ambushes. On the bare plain, the wolf has to drive its prey for hours to the horizon. Here work the laws of close combat and sudden rushes from nowhere. The rustle of dry reeds or the quiet crack of a branch means one thing: the predator is already very close. In this green labyrinth, there is no point relying on your eyes. Those with fine hearing and a keen nose survive. Hunters and prey play a nervous game of hide-and-seek at minimal distance for days on end. The animals move stealthily, press against thick fallen trunks, and hide in the thickets of giant reed, which in places grows twice the height of a person. Life in the bosque obeys a hidden, almost paranoid rhythm. No long, beautiful chases. Everything is decided by one silent leap from the darkness, and the outcome of the fight is clear in the first seconds. But even in this wall of branches and thorns, where a large animal seems to have no room to turn, there are its own masters. When the summer heat retreats, the leaves of the cottonwoods flare copper. Over the muddy river suddenly carries a low, vibrating roar. This primeval sound cuts the thickets like a knife, making the small creatures freeze in terror. The roar means that out of the darkest depths into the light come the giants. They drop their camouflage to begin a brutal battle for the right to pass on their genes. This trumpeting, goosebump-raising roar is made by the elk, the true master of these bottomland forests, once nearly wiped out here and brought back to the river country. Almost the whole year, these heavy but surprisingly graceful animals sit quieter than water, dissolving at the slightest thing into the thickets of willow and reed. Their sandy gray coat perfectly hides them against the dry trunks. Weighing hundreds of pounds, the elk manages to step through the deadfall without a sound. But autumn comes and everything changes. Instinct switches off caution completely. The rut begins. The bosque becomes an arena where the males forget about sleep and self-preservation. From the mad spike of testosterone, the secretive giants turn into unpredictable fighters. Now they are ready to kill for the right to leave offspring. They begin preparing for the tournament long before the first fight. The forest is literally soaked with nerves. The males furiously mark territory, plow the damp, heavy ground with their hooves, leaving pits with the sharp smell of musk. With their heavy branching antlers, they smash bushes and strip the bark of living trees, winding dry grass onto their bone crowns just to seem even bigger and scarier. Across the whole forest carries a vibrating hum, something between the dull bellow of a bull and the wheeze of a huge trumpet. It is not a cry of the soul. It is a challenge thrown into the darkness of the damp forest. The bull staked out his plot and waits. Suddenly, from the thicket, answers an equally brazen rival, ready to risk his hide. If the other voice sounds weaker, it rarely comes to a fight. The small male simply retreats and hides in the shade. But if the size and the swagger match, the bottomland forest shudders from the impact. Two giants meet on a narrow trail among the dense brush, where there is no room even to turn, and lock in a deadly clash. There are no beautiful ritual dances from the TV shows here. It is a raw, primeval meat grinder. The antlers crash with such force that the dry crack of bone carries for hundreds of yards, drowning out the noise of the river and the cries of the birds. Plowing the slippery mud with their hooves, they hoarsely breathe out the hot air. Each tries to push through, break, physically trample the other. The antlers lock dead into a hard grip. To get out of it is almost impossible. One wrong move, a second's mistake, and the polished bone tines will punch through a neck or a chest. Then the dispute for dominance will end with a bloody full stop. The fight can go on for hours. The surrounding bushes turn into a mush of mud, blood, and branches. The bulls fight to complete exhaustion, breathe heavily, drop saliva, and foam white. In the wild, victory rarely comes without blood. And defeat is not just a blow to animal pride. The winner takes everything, gathers a harem of females, patrols the territory, and breeds, bathing in short autumn glory. For this, he pays with a heavy loss of weight, knocked out teeth, and fresh scars, but his line will live on. The loser gets a tragic finale. Wounded, with broken antlers and squeezed dry, he loses his safe plots and becomes an outcast. He has to wander the edges of the bosque, where there is far less food, but deadly dangers many times more. An elk exhausted by the tournament is a perfect target. The smell of blood and fresh wounds and heavy breathing quickly attract those used to finishing off the weak. The bosque does not forgive weakness. Invisible predators are already on the trail, catching every rustle of the fading giant. But in these floodplain jungles, between the river and the desert, hide not only the horned kings and their pursuers. If you go farther from the bank into the boggiest thickets, the thorny brush gives way to a solid wall of towering reed. And here, live creatures of a completely different sort. They do not care about noble duels and shows of strength. They just barge straight through, crushing any obstacle with their mass. In the sticky, squelching mud among reed twice the height of a person reign the wild hogs, the feral pigs that went loose across this whole state. For any other animal, the reed labyrinths are a stifling trap. There is no room to turn and nothing to see farther than your own nose. But the hog is comfortable here. It is its fortress, which it reshapes for itself with the drive of a bulldozer. The body of a boar is a living battering ram, a narrow chest, a massive neck, a heavy head, and short, powerful legs. This living projectile, weighing close to 200 pounds, punches through the thickets without even thinking of breaking. A person in the dry reed will instantly cut their skin to blood on the sharp edges of the leaves, but the hog does not care. It is saved by its very thick hide, covered in stiff bristle-like wire, and by a coat of dried mud that works like a natural bulletproof vest. In the reeds, eyesight is not needed, so the hog's eyes are tiny, but its nose and hearing are phenomenal, and its snout works both as a radar and as an excavator bucket, turning huge roots and boulders out of the ground. And here begins the most terrible part. We are used to thinking that wild pigs peacefully chew acorns and roots. In the harsh reality of New Mexico, it is better to forget that fairy tale. The local hog is an eternally hungry machine. It eats absolutely everything. Yes, usually it is reed rhizomes, bulbs, shoots, and wild fruit. But if it comes across a bird nest, a snake, a frog, or a mouse, it swallows it without a thought. And if the herd stumbles onto that same exhausted elk, the pigs instantly turn into vultures, and their jaws, with self-sharpening tusks, grind others' bones to dust. To run into a hog in the narrow reed corridors is the worst nightmare. These beasts know no fear, but their temper is explosive. A wolf or a cougar on meeting them will try to leave. The boar strikes first. Especially terrible is a sow with striped piglets, the slightest threat to the litter, and she throws herself into the attack without warning, sweeping away everything alive. With one blow of the lower tusks, dagger-like from the bottom up, an adult hog easily rips open the belly of a large predator. They barge straight ahead, not making out the road, leaving in the mud wide, trampled paths, as if a hurricane passed through. The hog trails punched through the dense reed are the main roads of the bosque. Everyone uses them, from small rodents to hoofed animals going to water. But any convenient trail sooner or later lures those used to keeping to the shadows and living at others' expense. As soon as the herd of noisy giants leaves, on their place come completely different animals. Where raw force just raged, appear the masters of cunning, camouflage, and hellish patience. Along these same hog trails silently glide those used to finishing the leftovers of giants. In the thick shade of the bosque, where any rustle is drowned by the splash of the river, rule predators of a completely different sort. As soon as the day's heat drops and the dusk thickens, the forest is cut by a many-voiced, eerie howl. So call to each other the coyotes. Now it is their night. It is thought they are cowardly scavengers, forever looking for scraps. But here, on the harsh banks of the Rio Grande, these are some of the smartest and most tenacious beasts. Unlike the wolf, the coyote does not need open spaces for long, exhausting chases. Its strong suit is stealth, teamwork among the dense thickets, and total omnivory. catching the smell of blood from the elk after the tournament fights, or stumbling onto the remains of a hog's feast, the pack gathers in a flash, divides it noisily, with growling short fights, tearing pieces right from each other's jaws. But the coyote is not just a scavenger. If there is no easy prey, the small reddish-gray dogs instantly turn into a coordinated hunting pack. They can, by cunning, drive a young hog into a bog, cut a careless fawn off from a deer, or often raid bird nests in the shallows. But where the coyotes take by boldness and numbers, another lone hunter works. Its approach is completely different. This is the bobcat, the most secretive and dangerous predator of the American thickets. It looks little like a fluffy house pet. Large, muscular, on high, strong legs, with tufts on its ears, it resembles a lean, miniature lynx. On its rough, yellowish-brown coat, there are no bright spots or clear stripes. Such a dull outfit is excellent camouflage, to blend with the dry last-year reed. The bobcat does not like to waste strength on running around. Its main strategy is icy patience and one measured leap. A quiet, shallow backwater covered with green duckweed. At sunset, a flock of wild ducks or a group of quail noisily comes down there. The bobcat can crawl for hours at the edge, not moving a single muscle, while its paws slowly bog down in the cold, squelching mud. It waits for that very moment when a careless bird comes a little closer to the reeds. Its eyes fix the smallest ripple on the water. Its ears catch every rustle of wet feathers. And as soon as the distance shrinks, the spring releases. The bobcat delivers a leap of unthinkable force. It is able to shoot up vertically 5 or 6 feet, knocking a panicking, taking-off bird right out of the air. A fraction of a second. Perfect coordination and the death grip of the claws. The cat falls heavily back into the water. In its teeth already thrashes prey. And one more instant, and it silently dissolves into the wall of reed, as if it were never here. These elusive predators are the top of the food chain of the bosque. They clean the banks, hold back the small animals, and save the oasis from rotting in its own waste. But any river valley, even the greenest and richest, one day ends. Sooner or later, the saving moist corridor runs into a solid barrier. The soft river clay gives way to hard, lifeless stone, and instead of the rustle of reeds, remains only the dry whistle of the wind in the canyons. The landscape makes a sharp flip. You have to lift your head. There, above, the blazing sun burns the ancient, wrinkle-cut summits. This border breaks off sharply. The green ribbon of the Rio Grande, with its stifling bosque and bird racket, stays somewhere far below. And before us, right out of the flat plain, suddenly grows a colossal wall. These are the desert mountain ranges of New Mexico, the San Andreas and the Sacramentos, ancient ridges cut with deep scars of canyons, cutting into the sky like the spine of a giant petrified dragon. When the sun goes behind the clouds, these rocks instantly fill with a stern, leaden color. There are no white glaciers or alpine meadows here like on the high peaks. These mountains lived their youth millions of years ago. Now they simply crumble, sliding apart with time, turning into a chaos of sharp stones, dry canyons, and sheer drops. The winds walk here with wild force, blowing out the sand and for ages polishing the granite to a mirror shine. In summer, these rocks become a giant oven. The sun heats the stone to the limit. By noon, the air over the ridge shakes and melts, distorting the outlines of the canyons. Water is catastrophically scarce. It hides in deep cracks and rare drying springs. To them lead only thin trails beaten by generations of animals. It seems that on such scorching skillets, nothing more complex than lichen will survive. But evolution is stubborn. These ranges are a real lost world, an evolutionary island cut off from other mountains by a sea of dry plains and deserts. Because of this ancient isolation, unique life appeared here. Plenty of endemics, species you will not meet anywhere else on the planet. Here grow relics that lived through prehistoric ages. Their hard roots bite right into the bare stone. They pull moisture from literally nowhere. And this is the meager but only food for the local plant eaters. In the labyrinths between the scorching boulders boils its own life. It is strictly ruled by the schedule of sun and shade. At night, when the stone slowly gives off its heat, out come the geckos, their huge, unblinking eyes seeing perfectly in the dark, gathering the harvest of careless insects. By day, the relay is picked up by the collared lizards, which flatten against the sheer walls and blend with the stones so well you see them only at the moment of a sharp rush. Over the scree hop the scaled quail, wild mountain partridges whose ringing alarm cries echo through the empty canyons, escaping predators in long, springing leaps. Life here demands astonishing grip and precise balance. Any slip, every wrong step on these treacherous, sliding slopes ends in one fatal fall into the chasm. To live in the labyrinth of these ranges means to walk the edge every day. On one side bakes the sun, on the other gape the stone drops. Small lizards and birds are comfortable among the rocks, but it is hard to imagine how, in this vertical world where there are almost no flat areas, large animals survive. And yet, they are here too. Lift your gaze to the sharpest ridges, there, where the height makes your head spin. There you can make out dark, heavy silhouettes. They froze at the edge of the drop like statues, silently watching the burned landscape. These living statues are the desert bighorn sheep. You cannot believe your eyes when an animal the size of a calf, weighing a couple 100 pounds, calmly stands where there is nothing even for the eye to catch on. Their heads are crowned with heavy spiral horns. On the old rams they weigh a great deal. It seems that with such size and a giant load on its head, the animal would be clumsy and heavy, that it would begin to go around the dangerous terrain. But the bighorn breaks the laws of physics. A sheer cliff over a chasm is not a trap for it, but a reliable fortress. The secret of this mountain acrobatics is in the structure of the hooves. It is not just a hard, horny shoe, like a horse's or an antelope's. The bighorn's hoof is more like climbing shoes, with excellent grip on micro-terrain. Its outer edge is hard and sharp. It catches tiny ledges, and the inner part is soft, springy, and rough, like good rubber. The moment the ram shifts its weight onto a leg, this pad compresses, wraps the stone, and sticks dead to it. Add powerful spring legs and an excellent sense of balance. The bighorn jumps several yards in length and height, landing precisely on a spot the size of a saucer. And in life, it obeys a simple rule. The steeper the slope, the safer. On the gentle green foothills, there is always the risk of running into an ambush. Wolves, cougars, stray dogs, and other predators just wait for the mountain giants to relax and come down for grass. But at the slightest threat, the bighorn do not run in a straight line. There they are easily overtaken. They tear sharply upward, there where there is no way without wings or the same clinging hooves. The sight of a herd running up a sheer wall takes your breath away. Stones fly from under their feet. Dust stands in a column. The herd does not slow down. It simply flies up the ledge, easily leaping over deep cracks, as if these animals weigh nothing. The predator is left only to stand below. The chase is over. Life on the drop grants no favors. The lambs of the bighorn are born right here on the cold, wind-blown rock shelves. They have no time for a long childhood in a cozy shelter. A couple of hours after birth, the little one already stands on trembling legs, takes its first independent step on the slippery stones, and a couple of days later it walks after its mother along a sheer route, where any mistake is death. This is natural selection in its purest form. The lambs that did not conquer their fear of heights or lost coordination even for a fraction of a second fall into the abyss. Only perfect climbers survive, with genetics dead-tuned to this vertical hell. On their stone thrones, the bighorn seem invulnerable. They look down at the foot of the mountains and feel completely safe. But in this strategy, there is a blind spot. Watching for a threat on the ground, the mountain sheep forget that death in these ranges does not always come on four legs. Sometimes the saving height becomes the main sentence. It is enough to relax for a second and forget about the clear sky overhead. And there, where even the most cautious bighorn no longer looks, circle the true masters of the air. The golden eagles are among the largest and most ferocious birds of prey of the northern hemisphere. For them, the sheer cliffs, where the hoofed animals desperately hide, are not a barrier at all. It is their personal hunting ground, a giant chessboard where they always make the first and often the last move. The wingspan of the powerful wings reaches over 7 feet. Leaning on the invisible columns of hot air from the scorching stones, this giant can soar for hours in the heights. It almost does not flap its wings, turning into a silent dot against the blinding sun. But this seeming laziness is deceptive. The eagle's eyesight is the most powerful biological telescope. From a height of a couple of miles, it sees in detail both a ground squirrel warming on a stone and a newborn lamb on a cliff. Its eyes do not just notice movement, they instantly calculate the distance, the wind, and the victim's escape routes. The eagle knows its abilities perfectly. It cannot lift a 200-pound ram into the air. No one repealed the laws of physics. But raw force is not needed here. The smart predator uses the landscape as a weapon. It bets on gravity and that very height the bighorn so naively trusts. The eagle can circle endlessly, waiting for the perfect, measured moment. It watches how the herd balances at the edge of the abyss, waits for a female to lose vigilance and her calf or an overconfident young male to come right up to the treacherous ledge. And as soon as this mistake is made, the eagle makes its decision. The bird folds its giant wings, presses them to its body, and turns into a heavy projectile. The eagle breaks into a sheer dive, falling from the sky like a stone. The speed grows swiftly, passing over 150 miles an hour. The air, with a straining howl, is cut against its perfect body. The unsuspecting victim, to the last second, peacefully nips the dry grass. The eerie whistle of the air overhead is the first and only warning. The eagle's blow is terrible. It is the energy of a falling hammer, multiplied by 4 razor-sharp talons on each foot. They punch through the hide to the bone and clamp like a steel trap. Small game, like a careless chucker or a fat marmot, the eagle strikes right in flight. A crunch of the spine, and the predator already drags the limp body to its nest on the inaccessible cliffs. But with a heavy bighorn calf, it acts differently, calculating and eerie. Why try to hold a struggling kid in the air? It is enough to accelerate and deliver one powerful blow of the feet to the back while it stands at the edge of the drop. The force of the blow simply knocks the victim off its feet. The hooves slip on the smooth stones, and with a desperate bleat, the animal flies into the chasm to smash far below. The eagle gracefully spreads its wings, breaks, and unhurriedly glides to the bottom of the canyon to a ready meal. On the merciless cliffs, death falls right out of the clear sky at any second. Not a single chance of escape. It seems that if you do not come near the drops and always look up, you can outwit fate. But drop your gaze to the scorching stones where the prey just fell, and this illusion vanishes. In the winding cracks under the gray boulders and in the thin shade of the thorns hides another threat. On the ground, you do not need 7-foot wings or ramming speed. To sow death, it is enough to be invisible, devilishly patient, and carry in yourself just one tiny drop of liquid. A drop that kills faster than the eagle's talons. This liquid is enough to stop the heart of a large animal before it even understands what happened. Look closely at the boulders cracked from the heat. At first glance, only dry grass, gray dust, and lifeless stones. A deadly deception. In the labyrinths of scree and the deep cracks of the mountains hide the masters of the perfect ambush. Their main weapon is invisibility. They will not chase you, will not wear you down with a long pursuit like the wolves, or butt you like the deer. Their tactic is to blend completely with the landscape and wait. This icy, frightening patience leaves the victim not a single chance for a mistake. The main nightmare of these rocks is the western diamondback rattlesnake. Not just a snake, but a massive, heavy killing machine. It can pass 6 feet in length, thick as the arm of an adult man. It does not fuss like the small racers. It crawls heavily and confidently, like the true mistress of these places. Its muscular body is covered in matte, ashy gray, sometimes brownish scales, with an uneven, blurred pattern. Against the dusty granite, this camouflage works flawlessly. You can stand a couple of feet from the giant viper and notice nothing until the very last second. The rattlesnake can lie for days without moving, coiled in a tight ring in the shade of a ledge or by a dried stream, where the animals still come in search of moisture. It has no ordinary hearing, but with its whole heavy body, it catches the smallest vibrations of the ground. The cautious step of a fox, the knock of a bighorn's hooves, the fussy run of a quail. The snake reads all of this like a high-precision seismograph, and as soon as the target comes within the needed distance, the rattlesnake's seeming clumsiness vanishes in a flash. A lightning strike. The snake shoots the front third of its body a distance of its own length, its mouth wide open. Two huge, movable fangs punch through hide and muscle like perfect syringes. They inject a colossal dose of venom. This cocktail of enzymes instantly begins to eat away the victim's blood from the inside. Even if the bitten animal by a miracle springs away, it is doomed, and the huntress will only have to crawl unhurriedly along the fresh, bloody trail. The rattlesnake, at least in theory, you can spot. It is huge. But the second master of these stones takes a completely different way. The snake relies on a heavy strike and a sea of venom, but the black widow spider relies on invisibility and toxicity. This spider rarely grows bigger than a fingernail, a black, glossy belly, sometimes with a red mark. It hides in dead cracks, abandoned rodent burrows, or under thorny bushes. No beautiful symmetrical webs in the morning dew. The web of the black widow is chaos, a messy tangle of the strongest threads stretched right at the ground, like tripwires on a minefield. Such a web easily holds a struggling locust or even a small lizard. The victim catches a signal thread, and in the burrow, a trigger fires. The spider does not barge in. It methodically wraps the prey in sticky silk until it stops twitching and only then bites. The toxicity of its venom is simply off the charts. This neurotoxin is many times stronger than the venom of a rattlesnake. The bite itself in the first seconds is easy to miss, just a light prick, but then hell begins. The venom hits the nervous system, wild muscle spasms, paralyzing pain through the whole body, suffocation. A large animal that accidentally stepped on a nest will die in agony over several days. The spider does not need this carcass. It kills not for food, but simply defending its territory. The rattlesnake and the black widow are perfect symbols of these burned foothills. In them is the whole essence of the rocky scree: stealth, mercilessness, and the price of any mistake. But nature does not like monotony. If you leave the scorching stones of the desert ranges and climb even higher, there, where the air is crystal clear and it gets harder to breathe, the landscape changes beyond recognition. The heat gives way to a piercing cold, the bare rocks vanish, and a completely different high world opens. The climb up there is a serious test. With every few hundred feet, an invisible weight presses on the chest. The lungs work at the limit, and the heart pounds wildly. The thin, icy air burns the throat on the inhale. But if you endure this vertical route and cross the mark of 10,000 feet above sea level, the reward will take your breath away. The dusty desert ranges part, opening an endless emerald sea. The famous high meadows of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, the southernmost reach of the Rockies. The contrast is such that it is like stepping through a portal. The horizon drowns in dense green and billions of flowers, and above it all is framed by the white caps of the high peaks. At first glance, Mountain Idol, a paradise garden under the clouds. But do not let this postcard beauty fool you. The Alpine Zone is an arena of the harshest climate swings. Life here is dictated by the stern physics of altitude. Because of the thin atmosphere, the sun hits with harsh radiation. Bare skin burns in minutes. But the moment a leaden cloud crawls out from behind the peaks, the temperature crashes by dozens of degrees. There is simply no stable, warm summer here. Even in the middle of July, an exhausting heat can in half an hour turn into a snowstorm, covering the blooming flowers with an icy shroud. And every night in this paradise is a return to winter. The ground covers in prickly frost, and the ringing streams freeze under a crust of ice. In such harsh conditions, nature has no time for a slow start and long thinking. Summer at this height is painfully short, at most a couple of months, and then the mountains again fall into a long, hopeless, icy coma. So life on the alpine meadows boils, turning into a real botanical race for survival. The plants have to punch through the frozen ground, rush toward the sun, bloom, lure the rare insects, and give seeds, and all of this in a few weeks. For the local animals, such a lush carpet is a real gift, but taking it is not easy. It requires phenomenal endurance. At this height, the constant lack of oxygen turns every movement into a hard trial. The high country plant eaters learned to virtuously squeeze energy out of every meager breath. They have a bigger heart, larger lungs, and their thick blood is packed to the limit with red cells. They graze on these steep slopes, greedily eating the nutritious, protein-rich alpine grass. They need to build up the maximum layer of fat because the biological clock ticks mercilessly. The animals know perfectly that the moment the first serious snow lies on the meadows, the high feeding trough closes tight. A long, exhausting fight with the cold will begin. But sometimes in the high grass gape frightening wide swaths. The stems there are not just trampled, they are crudely torn out by the roots. Heavy boulders are carelessly flipped over by a powerful force, and the ground is deeply dug up. These are the fresh tracks of one who is not used to hiding in the canyons or timidly running away. The true master of these pastures is huge, solitary, and always hungry. Its preparation for the long winter sleep is such an aggressive process that all the other residents of the meadows, in terror, give it the road. This massive lord of the high country is the black bear, which in these mountains often wears a beautiful cinnamon or blonde coat instead of black. It is noticeably smaller than the famous giants of Alaska or the northern forests. Here, its weight rarely passes 300 pounds, but on these wind-blown meadows, it is the absolute predator. It has no natural enemies, if you do not count the harshest climate itself. And all of life at high altitude comes down to a non-stop race for calories. The mountain bear has no chance to survive the harsh winter if, before the first snows, it does not build up a thick, many-inch layer of fat under the skin. So, in the short alpine summer, its brakes come off. The brain switches on the mode of hyperphagia, total animal hunger. It eats 20 hours a day. It just walks down the blooming slopes from top to bottom and sweeps up everything in a row. It leaves behind eerie, wide swaths in the high grass, flattening whole clearings. Its paws work like excavator buckets, easily opening the hard and sometimes dead-frozen stony soil. The bear, with maniacal stubbornness, digs the ground for nutritious roots, juicy bulbs of wild onion, and thick rhizomes. In a day, it takes in dozens of pounds of such food. From the side, its raw, monstrous strength simply throws you off. The animal comes up to a boulder grown into the ground, weighing hundreds of pounds, and with one careless swipe of a paw, tosses it aside, as if it were an empty plastic basin. And all of it just to lick up with one movement of its broad tongue the beetles, ants, and fat grubs digging in the damp earth under the stone. Before winter, everything goes into play. The rare high country berries, the late mushrooms, eggs from raided nests, and carrion, which it smells from many miles away. The bear's nose is far keener than any hound's. The animal methodically vacuums slope after slope, foot by foot, building up the fat armor for the long sleep in a stone den. But to consider this heavy lump a peaceful lover of roots is a fatal mistake. The moment the wind brings the smell of someone else's weakness, the merciless instinct of a primeval killer wakes in it. The black bear is a classic opportunist predator. It understands perfectly. Fresh meat is a calorie jackpot that will save it days of tedious digging. The moment it notices a herd of mountain sheep or a limping, sick young bighorn, its behavior changes in a fraction of a second. The noisy, snorting bulldozer suddenly becomes an absolutely silent and calculating hunter. The animal skillfully uses every fold of the terrain, the deep gullies, and the high grass. It comes strictly from downwind and gets within rushing distance. And then happens something hard to believe. This seemingly slow giant breaks from its spot and on a short rush hits close to 30 miles an hour. The ground hums and shakes under the blows of its heavy paws. The stunned hoofed animal often simply does not have time to understand what muscular avalanche just flew out of the blind zone. One crushing blow of a clawed paw on the run is enough to break the spine of a large ram. The bear instantly piles on the struggling victim with all its colossal weight and brings its jaws into play, ending the agony in seconds. Having taken large prey, it will not back off. It will gnaw the bones white, furiously driving off any feathered and four-legged scavengers. Having filled its belly and stored a little more of the saving fat, the bear heavily rises, shakes the dirt and stuck blood from its hide, and unhurriedly wanders to the upper edge of the snows, there, where in a deep rock crevice its icy den already waits. The massive figure melts into the evening fog, and only when the heavy steps finally fade in the distance does the alpine meadow begin timidly to come alive. Out of hundreds of unremarkable little burrows, dug right under those same flipped boulders, poke whiskered, trembling muzzles. For every step of the bear, for every shadow of an eagle's wing in the sky, from under the ground, with their tiny hearts stopping, watched those whose whole life is one continuous paranoid fear. Those whose invisible underground cities stitch these blooming slopes right through. These are the yellow-bellied marmots and the pikas, the true, if very timid, masters of the high country. The departure of the predator is a minute's respite for them. The little animals live in constant fear. Every day they have to choose, risk their life for food or stay hungry but whole. To survive on the bare, wind-blown slope is not easy, so the marmots had to become real engineers. The ordinary-looking earth mounds hide under them a whole network of invisible megacities. Under the roots of the alpine grasses hide multi-level catacombs. They go several yards deep into the hard, frozen ground. In the darkness of the labyrinths, everything is strictly thought out. Wide main tunnels, dead-end decoys for predators, insulation chambers, and spacious wintering compartments. The marmots do not just dig passages, they tightly pack the walls and build a complex ventilation system. Because in winter, when the mountain covers in a many-foot layer of snow, the colony will fall into a long hibernation and it will need fresh air. And while the marmots hurriedly build up fat before winter, their neighbors, the pikas, fuss on the stones for a different reason. Pikas cannot hibernate, so the short mountain summer turns for them into a non-stop haymaking. These tailless relatives of rabbits cut the grass with their sharp teeth and lay it out to dry on the hot stones. The grass must not rot. It has to be perfectly dried, and then the hay dragged into stone niches. Such tiny haystacks will save the pikas' lives when the mountains are bound in thick ice. For another bundle of grass, the little animals constantly run out of cover. Every foray is like a game of roulette. Both the marmots and the pikas are the favorite treat of any predator in these mountains. They know it. Life here goes by the laws of wartime. You cannot relax. On every large stone and earth mound, a sentry is always on duty. The marmot stretches up into a string, leans on its muscular tail, and freezes like a fluffy post. Its eyes, without stopping, scan the horizon and the sky. It must be the first to notice the shadow of an eagle in the eye of the sun or a fox creeping through the grass. The slightest hint of danger and the sentry gives a piercing whistle, carrying across the whole meadow. The sound hits like an electric shock. In a fraction of a second, the slope, where life just boiled, empties. Hundreds of rodents burst from their spots and dive like bullets into their burrows. The predator is left one-on-one with an absolutely empty clearing. But even such a well-tuned guard system does not always save. Bears easily flip heavy boulders and take the marmots by force. Eagles often fall from the sky faster than the alarm sounds, and the flexible ermines climb right into the narrow tunnels, staging a brutal slaughter in total darkness. These huge colonies of rodents are a living foundation. On them rests the whole fragile and merciless food pyramid of the high country. They eat tons of alpine grass, turning it into pure fat and protein for those who stand higher in the chain. To breed fast and in masses is their only strategy, and it is exactly this that saves the mountain predators from starving to death. But among all the enemies of these timid underground builders, there is one special one. Its coming will not be caught even by the most alert sentry. To wait for danger from the sky or peer into the grass is useless. This predator rarely comes down to the meadows at all. It lives on the border of the eternal snows, where there is almost no life. Over the frozen rocks, it steps without a single sound and always appears suddenly, leaving no chance of escape. This is the mountain lion, the cougar, the true ghost of these peaks. Science long ago declared the eastern cougar gone, but here, in the wild heights of the Rockies, it still rules, and seeing it in the flesh is like winning the lottery. Its tawny gray coat blends with the granite and the dirty snow so perfectly you can look right at it from 20 feet and not understand there is a predator in front of you. The cougar does not roar like a lion or a tiger. The structure of its throat does not allow it. It moves in complete silence. Its whole life is endless solitude and hard work. It has short but incredibly powerful front legs and long back legs, real springs, which let it make leaps of 30 feet or more. Its wide, padded paws work like snowshoes on the loose crust and like suction cups on the bare, iced stone. Its long, thick tail is almost equal to the length of its body and works as a perfect balance during a furious chase after a bighorn along a ledge a hand-width wide. And during the long, freezing nights, the cougar simply wraps that tail around its face and sleeps, as if in a warm wool scarf. It hunts with cold calculation and no mercy. At this height, there is little oxygen, and to waste strength on a long chase is simply stupid, so the cougar prefers ambushes. For hours, it stalks a herd of hoofed animals, trying to stay higher on the slope and blend with the stones. Silent as a shadow, it glides from boulder to boulder until only a couple dozen yards are left to the target. And then the victim has no chances. The cougar drops onto the bighorn's back, sinks in its claws, and instantly strikes with its fangs to the neck. Often they go tumbling down the steep slope together in a cloud of snow and stone. The life of the predator itself hangs by a thread in those seconds. One strong blow against a boulder, and it is over. But the jaws will not release for a single moment until the prey stops struggling. On these peaks, the cougar is the perfect killer, the invisible top of everything we have seen. And so it closes, the full circle of wild New Mexico. From the scorching gypsum dunes of the south, where the Gila monster forces its way through the sand, to the green ribbon of the Rio Grande, where the elk bellow and the bobcat waits in the reeds, to the sheer desert ranges of the rattlesnake and the eagle, and up to the icy peaks where the cougar reigns. This is not a cozy zoo. It is a giant, merciless machine where there is no room for the weak, and every day is a battle for a drop of water and a scrap of shade. Look how everything here is tied by invisible threads. The marmot feeds the eagle, the elk feeds the coyote, the fish and the river feed the whole bosque, and even the death of the loser in the autumn tournament is not in vain. It becomes food and fuel for the whole system. These animals did not just learn to survive here. They turned the elements from an enemy into an ally. They learned to shed heat in the summer and grow armor by winter, to read the sand and the snow like an open book, to squeeze life out of a single drop of dew. From the desert bighorn dancing on the edge of the abyss to the cougar that became a ghost of the mountains, they are the true masters of this harsh land. And as long as these mountains stand and the Rio Grande carries its muddy water through the desert, this endless, brutal, and incredibly beautiful battle for life will go on. New Mexico does not forgive weakness, but it is exactly in these harsh conditions that the most astonishing survival machines on the continent are born. Take care of this wild world. Study it, because there is nothing on earth more honest or more grand. Thank you for being with me at the burning, frozen edge of the American Southwest.